Welcome to Jurassic Park.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Why don't we just wait here for a little while?
Do you want to know what it is?
There's no knowing where you might be swept off to.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
Shepherds we shall be, for thee, my Lord, for thee.
I don't know. I'm making this up as I go.
There's a special rug in hell reserved for people who waste good scotch.
He peed on my rug!
He peed on the dude's rug.
Do your worst.
Final report of the commercial starship Nostromo.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Welcome to your feature presentation. I am your host, Heath Fall. Today we are talking about movies coming out this weekend and House of the Dragon. Should you be watching it? Is it any good? What's going on? With me today, as always, salt-free, butter-free, Andrew McKay.
Man, flavor-free. The flavor of life is the sun. As long as you have SPF 50, food is bland.
Yeah, that's true.
Your food tastes like stuff? I don't know.
Yeah, salt is the salt of the food world.
Oh, interesting.
I did a diet one time that was like a dairy-free, kind of like cutting some stuff out. Like,
Yeah.
and so I was cutting like even like butter out of stuff. And I remember that was the only time that I've made popcorn with just salt, like just some sea salt, and it was still pretty good.
Yeah, but no salt
But
popcorn.
no salt.
It's just air.
Yeah,
Styrofoam, actually. It tastes like styrofoam.
it does. Also, hot take: when I go to the movie theater, I sometimes don't have them put butter on it, like the extra butter. I just feel like it gets on my
Same.
fingers. You know,
It's like butter flavored already, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd say so.
They put butter in the big tin
Yeah,
because
exactly.
they pop it in oil, and that's like butter.
Yeah, so don't
It's
butter.
not- I'm sorry. They don't pop it in oil, which is like butter. They pop it in butter, which is
That's like
butter,
oil.
which is like oil. If
Uh,
you work at a movie theater and I'm dead wrong, let me know.
Yeah, you know,
Also, get me into a movie.
Justin Gill from the Doodads used to work at a movie theater.
Oh, okay. Let's
Yeah.
call him.
I know.
Let's get
Here,
him on the pod.
I'll get him. Yeah, we should talk about that. He's got some funny stories about that. Maybe we have those guys on. We'll do that.
Maybe
I
fun.
apologize for my voice tonight. I'm a little sick, so if it's a little hesitant or you just don't hear something, I'm probably coughing or something like that. So, but yeah, we're gonna jump right into it. So we got movies coming out this weekend. We got 3 pretty interesting ones. What do you want to start with today?
Yeah. So Blink Twice is about when a tech billionaire, Slater King, meets cocktail waitress Frida at his fundraising gala. He invites her to join him and his friends on a dream vacation on his private island. As strange things start to happen, Frida questions her reality. Da-da-da.
Have you ever questioned your reality?
That one time that I threw up 14 times in a 7-hour period, I was like, what is life? What is to be alive?
I think we all question that, like when we have the flu or something. Like,
Dude, yeah.
have you ever thought about thinking before?
What was it like to breathe normally?
Every
Yeah,
time
so
I get like congested or a stuffy nose, I'm
Oh,
like,
man.
why am I not thankful for breathing normally?
Every day of my
Every
life.
day.
Yes. Wake up and go, ah.
Yeah.
Which, can you do that right now? Oh, loser.
Not well. Remember last week I talked about how there's like a subgenre of horror movies where it's like what's happening next door kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think there's also a subgenre of horror that's let's go to this island kind of stuff.
Mm.
You know, like they're like
Willy Wonka,
setups.
come with me.
And you'll be in a world of
pure imagination.
Second time we have sang that song on this podcast.
Wow. I know
Check
you have a
out our-
chalkboard to keep track.
I have a massive chalkboard just like tallying songs. No, okay, we sang Wonderwall last week. Okay. That was on our Dune 2 reaction pod.
You're right. Oh, man.
So let's go to the next one, The Crow.
Sure. The Crow. Also, I'm sorry, a Blink Twice thing that caught my attention
I'm sorry.
was that Zoe Kravitz is directing and writing, or directed and wrote this movie.
Oh,
She's Catwoman from Robert Pattinson's
Pattinson.
Batman. Matt Reeves.
so the tea, I guess, with her is she's engaged to Channing Tatum.
No way.
Yeah, I saw that.
Good for her.
Also, shout out to my buddy Matt Solom, who has a picture with her, Zoe Kravitz. She
Why?
was at Lollapalooza.
Palooza.
I struggle saying that word when I'm not sick.
So he saw her at a music festival.
Yeah, and her band was playing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then she was just in the crowd, and he's like, "Can I have a picture with you?" So he's got a picture with her. That's pretty
Oh, that's
cool.
so cool.
He should have
Wow.
asked. He should have asked her. This was like 5 years ago. But hindsight, he should have said, "Hey, you're probably going to get engaged to a guy that wants to make a Gambit movie. Is that movie still going to happen?" You know?
Yeah. And when you find out, text me. Here's my number.
Here's my number. So call me maybe. Okay.
Yeah.
Checking the
So
saying that
next,
song.
next is The Crow. In this modern reimagining of the 1994 cult classic, shout out The Crow, soulmates Eric and Shelley are brutally murdered. Given a chance to save her, Eric must sacrifice himself and traverse the worlds of the living and the dead, seeking revenge.
People die around here all the time. What makes you think it was murder?
What
This-
about the
I-
people he murdered?
What
murder?
To me, like, this looked kind of just like, isn't it Max Payne? Isn't that like the same kind of premise? Mark Wahlberg. It's based on a video game.
Oh, yeah. I was like,
Um,
wait, why do I know that movie?
Yeah.
Weird.
Constantine vibes, which I really like.
Uh-huh.
Constantine.
Mhm.
I don't know. To me, this is one of those movies where I'm kind of indifferent until, like, I'd love to see some reviews. You know, like, is this worth my time? So I don't know. What do you think about it?
I've heard not amazing things about it, but I do love the Skarsgård. See, now you got me messed up. The Skarsgårds. I believe this is Bill.
Yes. It
and
Pennywise himself.
Yeah, Pennywise is such a talented actor. So
Yeah.
that would be a big pull for me. I haven't seen the original. Confession.
Yeah, same.
Oh wow, look at us.
All right.
So there's no like, oh, cult classic reimagining pull for me, unfortunately.
That's tough because I think there is sometimes when you've waited too long, you know, like if you were like,
Yeah, 30 years.
yeah. But I just mean like if you haven't seen it, then you don't feel that. You can't like watch The Crow,
Oh.
the original Crow today. It's like it's been too long. Like maybe if you watched in high school, you'd have some nostalgia, but it's hard to like, I don't know.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's my big feeling with like Ghostbusters is like a lot of people love that movie and I didn't dislike it, but to me it was just kind of like it's okay, you know, it just
Mm-hmm.
but then I watched it, you know, when I was a grown adult and it was an old movie and it felt old to me. So, there. I said it.
Yeah. I mean, you know what doesn't feel old? Alien. Anyway,
Brand new.
put that on your chalkboard. We talked about Alien.
Romulus.
Next up is The Forge. After graduating from high school without any plans for the future, Isaiah receives a push to start making better life decisions.
Yeah. It's just kind of like a Christian, you know, movie.
Yeah.
So, good on you.
Yep. Which is so funny. Like, yeah, just to say like, oh, it's just kind of one of those Christian movies. Like, we are Christians, but there are a number of incredible Christian movies.
Yeah.
Just from a production standpoint. So
I'd rather go see
But-
Alien again.
I know. Anyway, those are the movies coming out this weekend. Which one would you go see, Heath? Which one would get your ticket?
I think Blink twice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same.
What about you?
Good old Channing. Yep.
All right, let's jump right in. House of the Dragon. Here we go. So we're going to do this spoiler free. So if you want to watch the series, I hope this will maybe encourage you to. We're going to get some initial thoughts on how we feel about the show, kind of compared to Game of Thrones. And then going forward, then at the end, we'll kind of do like a actual season 2 kind of review. So yeah, we're like, how do you stand on House of the Dragon?
I like it. Overall, I had a positive experience from, season 2, obviously, but from season 1 on to season 2. Like, it's fun. It's really engaging. It's obviously a very beloved world. And I've read all the books. I watched Game of Thrones after it all came out, so I just like binged the whole thing.
Oh, nice. That's cool.
Yeah. But so like I'm really into that whole universe. So I think it was easy for me to enjoy it. Like I've read the book that the House of the Dragon is based on, Fire and Blood. So there are things happening that I'm like, oh, that's neat. I remember that.
Have you read Fire and Blood?
I did, yeah.
I loved it. I love Fire and Blood. It's like a history book, and I would say it's like the Silmarillion. Like if the Silmarillion excites you as it does me, like Fire and Blood is your thing. But if you tried to read the Silmarillion and you're like, I don't understand what's going on, it's too much, I'd rather just read The Hobbit, which is great. I love The Hobbit too. Then I would say steer clear of the book, because it is very, this happened then, this, and then this happened this. But then it's like, to me, I love that. Like the Silmarillion, like the houses of the elves, I love all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that brings up an interesting point. I don't think that House of the Dragon is the equivalent TV show wise to Fire and Blood or the Silmarillion. Like you don't have to be neck deep in the universe to be interested in House of the Dragon as a show. They've done a really great job of adapting it and adapting a very small portion of Fire and Blood because it spans hundreds of years.
Yeah. I think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's about it. I think that it's accessible to anyone who's interested in this type of story.
And I think it's cool because it also, it does, in a good way, it's light. Like you don't need to read anything. You don't need to watch anything. I would say you don't even need to watch original Game of Thrones. Like this is
correct.
Just jump in and watch it. Like that's really cool to me about this show.
Yeah, it's very self-contained, and they do a great job of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really cool. We talked a lot about how Marvel movies are kind of having trouble because you have to watch so much. And it's hard for people to join. We're like, well, I have to watch 17 movies to catch up. And this is just like, nope, just put it on. I do think it's weird because I think it doesn't have the quality of the Game of Thrones, the original show.
Interesting.
The writing, the acting, especially season 1 Game of Thrones, I feels like, for me personally, it's some of like the finest TV ever written. I just think it's like every conversation means something, and it's just all these worlds are so cool. I think this to me reminds me of later seasons of Game of Thrones where it's more action heavy, but it's cool stuff is happening, because like we waited so long in the original series to see dragons, and then this one starts off with dragons. So that's cool too. And I do think, I brought this up before, this is House of the Dragon is such a visual show. It's such a cinematic experience. And for shows that are coming out right now that might not feel that way, it's really refreshing. It's just like, this is just a visually cool looking show. And it's like, it's exciting. There's knights, there's dragons, and it's well acted. Some amazing actors in this.
Even like the sound design of the dragons, if you watched towards the later, no spoiler, but if you watch towards the later half of season 2, the noises that the dragons make are like whale songs. They're like genuinely beautiful.
Yeah.
Like how they're like chirping and cooing. Like, I don't know. I don't have a lot of words for that. But they sound like whale songs, which makes sense. Like you're a massive animal. And the biggest animal on the planet sounds like this. So maybe it'd be a little bit similar. Yeah. But I loved that. I'm a big whale fan.
Big fan of whales over here.
Big fan of whales.
I would say too, the editing, the acting, the sound design, the scoring is really top notch in this show too. I think it's a bummer because if this wasn't about Game of Thrones, attached to Game of Thrones, I think it'd actually be reviewed higher. but people are comparing it to Game of Thrones. So it almost kind of has like a negative thing. And I'm not saying it's even to that level or it's better, but it's like, it's such good TV for what we're getting on TV right now, especially with streaming services, you know? But yeah, I think it's definitely a show that's worth checking out, especially for people who liked Game of Thrones or just like that kind of TV, just like that event level TV. I remember I loved the original Game of Thrones. So you said you binged it, so you started watching it after it had all come out?
Yeah, and I had heard that everyone was so ticked about the ending. And I don't think that made me want to watch it, but I was like, oh, I can temper my expectations. So I had a great time. Like, I watched, everything was accessible. It was ready for me. I watched the whole thing over like a summer or maybe a summer into the fall. It was like a full year after everything had come out, like finished. And somehow it was not spoiled for me, probably because I wasn't into it. Like my algorithms on social media weren't like telling me.
Yeah.
So I had a good experience with it, but like the qualms are minor because it was all ready for me. I didn't wait at all.
That is really interesting because I think that was that weekly show that coming out, you know, that you get excited for. And I think I would say this too, even about The Acolyte. I think it's better. Certain shows are better if you just stream it all together. Like for you, you've had this whole experience of watching through this stuff and like, you didn't have to wait to see if that character was actually dead for a whole year. You just like went to the next episode. You're like, yep, he's back.
Yeah. And I think I would have liked to watch the first 4 or 5 seasons weekly, year to year with everyone, because there's a lot of like community in that when everyone is watching the same show. That doesn't happen very often. I think Game of Thrones was one of the last ones where like, it's Sunday night. Everyone is watching Game of Thrones at 9 p.m.
Yeah.
You know?
That was, for me, definitely that was one of those times where, like, even if you weren't friends with people, it's something you could just bring up. Like,
yeah.
You see last
night.
night's
Did you see
episode?
Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're like, oh, I can't believe that. Yeah.
And that was some of the funnest, like, TV viewing experience I think I've had, just because it was so good and it was so much fun to watch. That like I just remember watching every episode and being like, oh, I can't wait for the next episode. I didn't want it to end. Like it was like every time I saw like the credits, I'm like, no, I want more, and I have to wait a week. You know, and
and there's that whole like everyone loved it so much. I don't know if you've seen any of these memes, but it was like when you're showing your girlfriend Game of Thrones and she goes to skip the intro and you go, not in this house. And you just watch. It's like, yeah, Game of Thrones is like the only show that I would watch the entire title sequence, and like I would never skip it.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah,
I love even just like what a brilliant idea that they show the map of the world during the intro, so you know where places are, and it helps you visualize how far places are. You know, and just like that was such a cool idea. Like it's the whole scene in the Two Towers when they're like Sauron attacks from Mordor, Saruman from Isengard. Like people unlike you and me who don't know the maps of Middle Earth.
I've got a back tattoo, the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. On my back tattoo, it's only Mirkwood. It's just the whole forest of Mirkwood in very big detail. Big Mirkwood fan over here.
Wow.
The Greenwood, as it should be called. Okay.
Oh, interesting.
So I think that was such a cool way to do that, and definitely love Game of Thrones. We should do a Game of Thrones episode.
Oh man, yeah. But it also like gave the people watching like, okay, where are we gonna be? This episode, because for the most part, the locations that it would show were the ones that were in the episode. So it's like this week you're in Dorne, and then you're going up to Winterfell, and then you're going to King's Landing. So it was just so broken.
Cool. I love too how the recaps were so important, because they would say, hey, this is important for you to remember. And there'd be sometimes you'd see scenes from seasons ago that like this conversation, remember this, like have that in your brain for this episode. I'm like, that was really cool. Like I feel like that was just really well crafted. And now we're just talking about Game of Thrones.
I know, I'm
As
sorry.
That's the Dragon. No, it's okay. It's good. It's
But
Game of Thrones is actually
relative,
pretty good.
it is, yeah. Well, House of the Dragon relative does not feel as big. And I don't know if like we can get into the spoiler section now, but I think that might be my one non-spoiler critique is that it feels really, really small. Obviously, it's between two families, but it does feel less grand.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're talking Dragonstone versus King's Landing, which are a bay away.
Right.
You know, as a lot of the stuff going down. So it does feel very small in central characters. I mean, Game of Thrones, you have people all over the place that haven't even interacted. I mean, how long did
Across the
Dany,
world.
yeah, not interact with anyone of main characters you saw? Like there were so many different plots going on, storylines, which was cool. So this is definitely a more direct storyline, which I don't think is bad. It's just like it's a smaller story, and then I think there's also some fun there because it's like you're always getting the main story. You're not like like when I read Game of Thrones, I remember I would always not read certain character points POVs because I'm like I just don't care, you know. Like,
That's funny.
yeah, you John or Dany or Tyrion, like if you're not, get out of here. But
Yeah, those are the three bigs.
yeah, three bigs.
Anyway, so spoiler review / talk. Now.
Yeah, we're
So
gonna
if
get
you
into
haven't-
spoilers for House of the Dragon. If you don't want spoilers, come back later. But I'd say if you like Game of Thrones, if you like current fantasy TV, like just go check it out. I think it's definitely worth viewing. And before we get into heavy spoilers, I will say too that the first season is really good, but it's definitely more chaotic with some jumping around at some time periods that I feel like you kind of have to, not in a bad way, but you kind of have to get through. And
I'm sure it would be more cohesive if you watched it all in a couple weeks.
Yes. And that's nice that you do now. Okay. Now we're going into straight up spoilers.
Mm-hmm.
That dragon ate that kid.
Dude, he's gone.
He gone.
Ain't nothing left.
So no, I think continuing that conversation, man, Paddy Constantine, the guy who played King Viserys, one of the best roles in TV I've seen. It was just, man, he was so good in that, and he played the king, the ego-driven king who wanted an heir versus the crippled king that still had strength.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, oh man, I was just like, just for his performance alone, I think House of the Dragon season 1 is amazing.
Yeah, he is like him by himself is such a dynamic character, so well acted that everyone else, if you go back and watch season 1, there's not a lot of dynamic changes. Like characters aren't going through things and changing and becoming something else.
Yeah.
As much as him, Viserys. Like he kind of overshadows. Like season 1, you're like, that was amazing. The acting, absolutely incredible. And like everyone is really good, but I feel the hole that Bryce leaves in season 2, where I'm like, oh, you were the most like shifting, like he was shifting and changing and like physically because of his sickness, he was changing every other episode, but also his character's demeanor, what would make him snap and where he would have patience. Is there patience anymore? Like that was always morphing. So season 2, I'm like, oh, everyone is the same. Like season 2, episode 1 through season 2, episode 8, all the characters are pretty stagnant. Like nobody, I mean, you could argue that this, like the plebs, the serfs that get dragons change, but their personalities are pretty similar. Like they're still the same. The drunk guy is still a snob. Like he still thinks he's all that, and he just has a dragon to prove it.
Yeah.
So that's a season 2 qualm that I have, is that there's not a lot of character change.
This is an interesting show because the first season goes through so many time jumps I mean, they start off with Rhaenyra and Alicent as kids, teenagers. And then they jump to them being married, having kids, and then they jump and their kids are teenagers, and so it's like, it's kind of difficult to see those. And so I think you're right. I think you see those, well, the character of Rhaenyra or Alicent change so much, or these Targaryen prince and princesses change so much, but we literally have seen different characters play them.
Right. Yeah.
Like we see 3 actors play some of the princes and princesses, which is so funny to me. But then those through lines, like the king, is so
Matt
cool.
Smith as Prince Daemon.
Oh, yeah, great. Love Matt Smith from like Doctor Who.
Oh yeah,
his man. Do you like Doctor Who? We've never talked about Doctor Who before.
I love a specific era of Doctor Who. I was super into it, and then I dropped off hard when there's a Doctor transition.
Yeah, which Doctor lost you?
I watched Eccleston and help me out, David Tennant and Matt Smith, and then I was done.
Peter Capaldi actually, I think, has some of the strongest episodes.
Really?
Of the
That's
series.
Encouraging to hear.
He gets in it. And there's some self-contained episodes that are so good.
Nice.
Yeah, there's one where he's just in a castle by himself. It's in like, yeah, I don't want to spoil that either, but just I'll send you that one because it's like,
that's cool. That's cool.
If you watch one episode, it's so powerful. I agree though. That was the highlight to me. Like Doctors 9, 10, and 11, such a fun run. Matt Smith, one of the best going when he leaves the show. That monologue. But yeah, great actor. I think he's great on this show.
Very good.
His character, he goes through a lot of stuff. It's interesting because I think there's some negatives about this show. That's like season 2 is where are these characters going? Daemon was in this, was in Melty Castle. Help me out.
Yeah,
Harrenhal for so long and like fighting his personal demons. And it's like, that's cool, but also, okay, it's episode 3 or 4 of this, But yeah, what did you think of season 2 in general? Like kind of moving to just that, like, it was definitely more streamlined with characters. Like we're not jumping around in time.
There was a lot more action, and I liked that because I feel like a season 1 of the TV show is permissible to make you wait for lots of stuff, like 2 dragons really fighting, not just like chasing down, right? Yeah. So there were some big payoffs in that. There were some big payoffs in some sword fighting, like combat induced by the split of the family. I think of Eric and Arik. That was my favorite moment that was my favorite episode of the entire show. Was Eric sneaking in as Eric, or Arik, to kill Rhaenyra, and I was absolutely glued to the screen. I was like, this is such a good plan. I don't even care if it's silly that like they didn't think about this. They didn't think like, oh, my personal bodyguard has a twin. I loved it.
I thought that was a great scene too. Yeah. So it's the twins that they each chose a different side.
Yeah.
Which I think that the stuff about this that's so interesting is like the history behind this show, like, which I love Fire and Blood. And it's so cool because this whole comes about because they didn't know if they should name the king. The king didn't have a direct heir. So they're like, do we name the eldest female or male? As like they didn't have a direct, like, do we do like, there's not a direct male heir. Do we do this male or this female heir? And then they went with the male, which is Viserys, right? I always get my Jaehaerys and my Viserys mixed up. So then he becomes the king, which is Paddy Constantine in season 1. But then the similar thing happens where they're like, does he name his firstborn? Is that his heir? Or is it his brother who is the male heir? Right. Which is a lot of Daemon's struggle. And then you have that he gets remarried and then has a son, and you're like, is this the new heir? And that's this whole conflict comes from. which is really cool. I think just that the political intrigue, we talk a lot about black and white TV shows or good versus evil. And it's just like, man, house warfare is so interesting to me.
Yeah. You get really into the politics and
Yeah.
all the weeds of everything.
Yeah. So I think it's cool too, because like with the dragons, it's all about, it's a nuclear deterrent. That's what it is.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's
mutually
this-
assured destruction.
Yeah, it's like, are we using dragons? Are you using yours? You know, and it's like this power play is involved, and I think that's so cool. But so this season was a bit of a weird thing that they ended on 8 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of want to jump to the end because I know a bunch of people are talking about the end. But I guess what else stood out to you first about this season?
That really the only other thing that I would mention is it started really, really strong. The middle was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And the end, like just that last episode for me, I did not like.
So, we'll just jump in then. So yeah, it like mid-season, they had this really awesome battle with dragons, you know, and then they had the cool, like, okay, we need more people as dragon riders. We have dragons, but we don't have dragons. So we need the Targaryen blood. So they started looking for like bastards and stuff like that, people who had maybe thin Targaryen blood, to see if they could ride dragons. And that was really cool. So the ending, I was going to ask, so a lot of people hated the ending. Are you talking specifically how it ended, or are you talking just the last episode kind of ended on a thud?
I liked the episode. I hated that it was the last one.
This is
and
weird.
It's not like a oh, you dirty dog left me on a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Like genuinely, I felt cheated that they would build. So season 1, I prefaced like earlier, you can get away with it being mostly political, mostly drama, and then you end the season with a dragon killing a kid, and you're like, oh, this is going to be the fire that starts it all. But you expect season 2 to be
the fire,
a giant fire. Like everything went to crap, and you want to see that fallout. And I felt like they used all of season 2 with a little spoil, like a little taste of the Dance of the Dragons in episode 4. But then they spent the entire season building up and to nothing. Like I was just, I couldn't believe it. I was like, this can't be the last one, because this was the whole point of season 2, is like you're gathering an army.
Are marshaled. And I remember too, I haven't looked at the budget stuff, but I remember that was a big thing in early Game of Thrones, is they were just like, we just don't have the budget to do these battles. I remember the first time Tyrion connects with the Wild Men, and he gets knocked out and misses the whole battle.
Yeah,
like, that's just because they didn't have enough. They couldn't film another battle.
That's so funny.
And so it's just like, which is, I feel bad because he also gets knocked out at the Blackwater. So like poor Tyrion keeps
right,
getting knocked out.
He loses his nose at the Blackwater.
Yeah. Yeah, which I always love the photo comparisons of what Tyrion actually would have looked like compared to the TV show. He's got like this little scar on his face, you know. And then like, yeah, he's like, nose is gone. In the book. But yeah, it was interesting. So I read that the season ended and a lot of people were upset about it. I heard, oh, thank you for that season 3 trailer, you know?
Yeah.
And it was weird because it ended on 8 episodes, and Game of Thrones has always typically been 10. The first season was 10 episodes. The showrunner said it was because of where the story beats were going. That's what he says, is that it was better to end there. Here's the thing. No, I loved. Okay, so here's what's going on. You have the show. The episode ends with all these armies marshaling, and I want to talk about that. But I think you think you're about to get a huge battle, and we don't get it. And you're like, if we had another episode, we'd get that. I think a lot of people are thinking, okay, now season 3. I don't think you're going to get a season 3 opening battle.
No, absolutely not. They can't.
And it doesn't make sense. It's just showing everyone marshaling, but
Mhm.
all these armies are in different places. It's not like season 3 is going to start off with Helm's Deep.
Right.
And
So
so
also the just the fact of how people write shows, like you referenced the beats of the story.
Mhm.
No one's gonna start off a whole season of a show with the thing everyone wants.
Mhm.
So that is discouraging to me in its own right. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, not only do I have to wait for the next season to get what you told me was coming, I have to wait for the next season to start and probably 7 episodes.
Yeah. So I get why I knew that was going to happen. I don't know about you.
Really?
When I was watching the last episode, when I saw what they were doing musically and what they were doing, I'm like, guaranteed that they're ending. They're about
It's
to
over.
end. Yeah. It didn't.
Yep.
I was like, okay. Which, yeah, we got some good battles in this show, but I would argue it's like, man, it is tough because you're also combating. When was the Battle of the Blackwater Bay? Was that season 3?
Season 2 or 3. It was pretty early.
Yeah, because I remember that was one of the most, they showed that as like a visual representation of like, well, look what we can do with movies now, kind of thing.
Right.
And man, Game of Thrones has so many cool Battle of the Bastards. I'm always like,
Oh, one of the best ever.
Yeah, I was like, if you don't want to watch Game of Thrones, but you love like medieval stuff or like fantasy stuff, if like I love Lord of the Rings, I don't want to watch Game of Thrones. Just watch the Battle of the Bastards, just that episode, because it is such an amazing like battle, and yeah, that's just
Blackwater was season 2, episode 9.
Wow.
And then there was another episode after that. There's a 10 to wrap up the season because that makes sense.
That's another thing we struggle with is like these quality TV shows is how far they got in certain seasons. Like I've always like how far Rick goes in the first Walking Dead season.
Yeah.
Like everything that happens. And then we have so many seasons of like, you're still on the farm,
Yes.
It's like shows struggle with that even within themselves. But yeah, it's like, man, even the original Game of Thrones, they were already having these big confrontation battles,
Mm-hmm.
But so what I did love about House of the Dragon season 2 is I think, like I said, I think the acting was really good. I think I love these characters and the house warfare. I love the music. I think the composer.
Oh yeah.
Raymond Dawadi, I'm gonna say.
Okay. Great.
So the last song is called "All Must Choose," and I sent this to you, and I said I'm not going to talk about it. Do you know why I want to talk about it or why I love this song?
I listened to it. I sat down and listened to it, closed my eyes one time through, and the beginning of the song sounds like the Halloween piano.
Oh, interesting.
Did you ever pick up on that?
Yeah, no, I didn't actually.
Like the really pingy piano from the Halloween soundtrack. I was really hoping that was what you picked out. Okay, what do you got?
Well, the Halloween score is in 5/4 time, so I wonder if that's what you're picking up. I hadn't thought about that. Maybe that intro's in. There's something in 5/4 that kind of sounds a little like the da 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 da. Anyways, so the reason I love this song, "All Men Must Choose," and I'll put it on our Spotify playlist.
Yeah.
We have a best movie scores on Spotify playlist. I'll put that on there. But it shows, so it goes through the last battle or the last scene of the season is it shows all these armies mustering, and this song plays and just like this kind of tense build up. And such a beautiful song that starts off light and really builds heavy. But what I love is every time they show a faction, they play their theme, like the melody. So like you see, which man, it just got me in the heart when you see the 2000 Longbeards from what's he call them? The Winterfell, the Graybeards, my Graybeards. I'll send you my Graybeards.
Yeah.
he's like, I'll send you the old men to support you. There's 2,000 of them. So like these hardened, stark soldiers.
Mhm.
And you hear the Winterfell theme, like the
Oh, that's so cool.
And then it goes to the Lannister, and then like the same song, like the and then like it plays each of their themes as they go. So
Oh,
it's
that's
like,
cool.
as an original Game of Thrones fan and as a music lover, you just like get those parts. I'm like, oh man, it's so funny to me sometimes when you're like, oh, the story group sucks on this. But man, the composer is just rocking it. He's
Just
like,
popped off.
it's
Yeah.
like I'm putting everything I have into this. It really reminded me too of Rings of Power,
Yeah.
as our
man.
boy Bear McCreary.
Bear McCreary. Yeah.
Man, Rings of Power season 1 is some phenomenal music.
I
And
agree.
he is someone, I listened to him on a podcast, and he was like, I wanted Rings of Power, like I wanted you to feel like these themes could go right into the Lord of the Rings movies.
Yeah.
So like you've got like the dwarvish theme of Khazad-dûm, the dun 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 dun, you know, and it feels like that is Khazad-dûm at its height. And then in the movies you get the you know, it's like it feels like that theme continues.
Yeah. Oh man,
Getting fired up over here.
that's so cool.
So that's
I'll have
go
to
check
watch
out
it
Lord of the
because-
Rings. Go watch Rings of Power.
Oh, I'll have to watch the end of that episode again because just listening to it, I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah, watch it.
I need the visual cue.
Just watch the last couple minutes of House of the Dragon, and it is such a beautiful time. And once you get that too, you can just listen to the song, and it's such a beautiful closing song.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like I'm not saying House of the Dragon is like amazing, defying Game of Thrones, but it's a solid show. I mean, I think we talk about the struggles I have with The Acolyte, and I do think this is a superior show. Maybe you disagree.
Yeah. No, I agree.
But it's like, it's go check it out. If you love Game of Thrones, just check it out. And especially you got 2 seasons to binge right now, you know, like that's a fun place to be. Any closing thoughts on House of the Dragon?
I think it's accessible even if you don't like Game of Thrones. Like you don't have to watch Game of Thrones. It's all 7 seasons or whatever to watch House of the Dragon. If you are into House of the Dragon, then you're going to lose it over Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Like,
That's a really cool thing to do too. Yeah.
yeah. So that's it. That's all I got.
Boom. No, take us home.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We have our full video show on YouTube. You can get this podcast in audio format anywhere you get podcasts. Give us a follow on Instagram at Your Feature Presentation. Thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure. Heath, I love you. Thank you for allowing me and inviting me to come to your podcast every week.
Of course. And next week, D23 movie releases. So we're talking.
Nice.
Go see a movie.
Love it. Go see a movie.